Over to Liah. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Liah. I'm a casual worker. I'm also completing my Masters, and I'm a single parent to a child who's 9 years old. I've been a single mother since my son was very young, and throughout our lives I've been on the sole parenting payment, and since my son turned 8 I've been pushed onto the lower payment of New Start. I've been a stay-at-home mum when my son was younger, and I also have and do juggle work and have put myself through university. Before the move to New Start, I received parenting payment single, of which 95% of recipients are women. Most years I was one of the 60% of mothers who report not receiving child support in full or on time, and some years I was part of the 1/3 of child support cases which involved less than $500 a year. Other periods I was one of the half of all unemployed single mothers who have health conditions or care for children with disability or illness. When on the parenting payment single, my rent has been 60% of my income at some times. I've used services to help pay my bills. I have struggled at various periods. Until my son was 5, we didn't own a car. And I'll tell you, infrequent public transport with a young child is hard. The washing machine breaking and using the bathtub to wash clothes that never really dried in the middle of winter and causing severe skin problems is hard. Not having money to afford medication is hard. Not taking your son to school for 3 days in a heat wave because the shit car you did own overheated and you couldn't afford repairs is hard. But with parenting payment single, we survived. And in other periods, we struggled less. I have worked a lot in different times and we've been okay. But the move to New Start last year meant a cut of around $160 a fortnight, and it's meant a steep decline into precarity over the last year, and not just because of the actual amount. I do remember hearing in 2012, on the same day that Julia Gillard gave her famous misogyny speech, the announcement that parents would be moved onto the lower payment of New Start. For coupled parents, it would be when your youngest turns 6, and for single parents, when your youngest turns 8. This moved 80,000 sole parents, the vast majority single mothers, onto the lower payment from the beginning of 23, and it's contributed to the increased poverty of sole parent families since 2012. And I feel, looking back at that announcement now, but back in 2012 it did send shockwaves. It said to me, as a young working class single mum of a toddler who had left a toxic relationship, who had postnatal depression, who had little family support, someone with no social or cultural capital, and certainly no economic capital, someone who was trying to build her life with her son, that there was a ticking time bomb to your life, that there would reach a point where there would be no safety net, that regardless of your work or your education or anything, that if for some reason I would need sole parent payment, as I did then, when my son turned 8, it would no longer be there, and that the meagre, paltry amount of New Start instead would mean abject poverty with scary implications. And it has. And I think it's very contradictory that this happened under a Labor government with Julia Gillard on the same day talking about misogyny, which is one of the most sexist policies that I think you could do, affecting the vast majority of single mothers. But I do situate my personal situation within a broader reality. And that broader reality is decades of privatisation and economic restructuring, which has scaled back public infrastructure, created a more precarious labour market while dismantling welfare provisions. It's seen the burden of care work significantly pushed onto individual families and largely women. It squeezes key social capacities. And for sole mothers on income support, like me, responsible for the bulk of paid and unpaid labour of their family, it's resulted in conditions of increased insecurity. This is not just one single policy, but this is actually decades of work, of which both Labor and Liberal have, of course, overseen. And as we know, part of receiving income support payments include welfare to work programs, which, through the rationales of work as the best solution to poverty, have increasingly coupled various strict compliance obligations for welfare recipients with stagnant or lower payments. But funnily enough, in concrete terms, my job-seeking responsibilities, of which I'm required to undertake, since my child turned 6, doesn't change. The change to New Start for parenting payment single doesn't change that. I'm still required to look for work or undertake acceptable activities according to job network providers. My son turning 8 changed none of this. All it did was cut my payments, actually create a barrier for lasting and meaningful employment, and increase poverty, including having increased childhood poverty. And my experience in the last year is that of the key contradiction of this policy being pushed onto New Start from the sole parenting payment. And that is that I have never worked so hard, so much, and never have I been in such a precarious economic position, ever. Because you earn just over $50 a week before Centrelink takes 40 cents to every dollar of your earnings before tax, less than what you're allowed to earn under parenting single also. And so there is a constant antagonism between my caring responsibilities and pressures to participate in wage labour, of which the change to New Start has only exacerbated. Many times I have been caught between these competing pressure points as a casual shift worker, and often to be able to go to work, I've had to find babysitting for my son, which has been totally inappropriate in order to survive, including having to leave him with his father who has active bouts of psychosis. In the last 6 months, 2 workplaces which I have employed have closed down. The last a few weeks ago. Before Christmas last year, I was employed for a month, and that was enough to put me in the position of having to receive food parcels from charity before I found consistent employment again. The only thing that this policy change has achieved in my life right now is increased isolation and precariousness. But I also don't see this as some random senseless policy position. I see it as part of a bigger long-term structural trend, which sees women as the majority of part-time, casual, low-waged, insecure workers, and also wants the work of social reproduction, the activities and relationships involved in maintaining daily life in the home and in communities privatised rather than provided by the state. Yeah. So I was asked at the end of my talk to pose a question, and this is specifically to the Labor candidate, which is when will you commit to a reversal of the cuts to sole parent payment that push them onto New Start? Not a commitment to review. What will you do to push for a commitment for a complete reversal and restoration of parenting payment? It's for everybody.
Yeah, the question, all candidates are invited to respond to that question, but given that Liah has indicated that really is a question for Labor, should Labor take government, would Nadia start, please?
Sure. Thanks, Liah. I'm really sorry that you've gone through this, and that policy change happened, because people shouldn't be punished for their circumstances, and people should actually be given the opportunity to be supported, and we should have wraparound services to ensure that people can actually care for their children, be part of their community, and study or be part of the workforce if they can. And I'm really sorry, I'm going to say exactly what you don't want me to say. It's part of the review, the sole parenting payment change, and for the similar reasons as why the New Start is part of that review. But again, it's something that will be done quickly. And I'm sorry I can't give you the answer you want, but please know that I'm I'm a respite and emergency foster carer, and I'm very, very conscious of the different challenges in our community and challenges that parents face, and that I'm really conscious that there are some people who lose their children, and it's not necessarily all their fault. I know this is a bit of a tangent, and it makes me really sad that we don't support people better from the beginning to try to prevent that kind of thing from happening, and we help to give people the opportunity to give their children the best start in life and for them to be able to succeed as well. But yeah, I'm sorry I can't give the answer you want, but please know that I will probably text Linda Burney straight after this and be like, what the hell are we doing?
Solidarity, sister, because everything you said sounded like my kid's childhood, except I think you've got it even harder now, which is, I don't know how you do it. It's not fair. I struggled so much, and I am angry that your payments have been cut. I'm angry at all the job network, rubbish, job active, whatever, slave labour, bullshit, busy work for people who have got better things to do. It makes me angry. It makes me angry how often my friends get cut off from their payments unfairly, and their kids do suffer. And then the school rings up and says your kid doesn't have the right things in their lunchbox, and it's just, this stuff makes me cry, and this stuff makes me angry, and this stuff makes me go and stand for election. Like, honestly, I'll fight for people like you, because you're people like me. And I'll fight within my own party, and I'll fight in Parliament. The Greens are on side anyway, but I'll push them to be more on side. I'm happy to do that. I'll fight in Parliament, I'll fight everywhere I go, because children are important and parents are important, and the unpaid caring work that women do is so undervalued. Here's my feminist streak, can't help it. And you know, you can hear intelligent, articulate women who are forced into these positions of just not being valued at all. And what I'm almost losing words with rage here. But we will reverse that. I will fight to reverse that, because single parents should be valued and adequately supported. I think most of the Greens are on board with that. Probably all the Greens are on board with that, but I will fight personally for that.
Exactly what you said. The problem is I know what you're going through, because I've worked with. Sorry.
So you don't.
Well, actually, I've been there. Okay. I've also had my breakdowns, and I've also went through divorces and separation, and I know what it was like. And I'm working with a lot of people who are doing this at the moment. So this is my job. This is what I do every day now. So I work with people like this. Now, with all due respect, I know how hard it is. And also, when a man loses a job, right, there is a certain thing, and I'm not trying to be chauvinistic here, but there is a slightly different area comes into play. The man is supposed to be the breadwinner. The man is supposed to hold the house up. And what happens is, they feel it a lot more. They feel it as well.
The question, please.
That is the question. Sole parents are not, look, sole parents are not being helped. That's the question. That's the answer. And the fact is, the sole parents have not been supported by either government for too long. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here listening to what you're saying, and I'm fighting for you. I'm saying we don't have to wait another 5 years or another election or the next election or the next election after that. You have the power in your vote. With your pen, you can change government. With your pen, you can change government. So please, use your vote to change the government, because you're not getting what you want.
We won't be getting Clive.
Look, it's not about Clive. It's about you changing the government.
He's a liar too anyway. Don't trust that.
Thanks, Leah.
She wrote this guy out.
For me, I do recognise that the vulnerable are often without voice, and the government seems to care less and less about vulnerable, and often it is women that are most vulnerable. It's not.
It's families,
it's not often men. It's more often women, and women are often the ones that care for the children, and are in that position. And caring for children is so undervalued in our country. I've got a good friend who, single mother, who's got a child who's just turned 9 6 months ago, and she's just struggled so much. She's gone without food, trying to do other things, trying to get a licence, and I understand that, and I would join with the Greens in getting that reversed. We as a society need to care for our most vulnerable. That's the bottom line. It's where we start, with the most vulnerable.
Thank you to all of the panellists and candidates.